All right, guys. Hey, well, welcome to Splits and Whiskey. Good morning. Today we have a very special guest, Tamara Fike, coming to us from Nashville, Tennessee. So Tamara is a children's mental health specialist, expert, legend. We'll go with all the terms that will make you blush. So, 30 years in the field. Tamara, do you mind just giving us a little bit about your background and telling us about yourself a little bit?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and share some of my story and hopefully some experiences and wisdom that I've learned along the way. Um, as you mentioned, I'm based here in Nashville, Tennessee, started working in positive youth development in 1996 and have seen the field grow and change since that time. And we can talk about that. But my focus has really been on how to help build resilience and positive childhood experiences for children, families, and communities.
Right on. This being a military focused podcast, have you done a lot of work with children of military families by chance?
Have done some work with kids at Fort Campbell, actually.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I was stationed there for a little while, so that's cool. What are some of the struggles you see with particularly for military children that we may take for granted, or the civilian side just does not understand?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we were working on base, we were working with Wassam Middle School, which is not the officer's school. So, and then we worked also in the Fort Campbell area, Clarksville, with some of the other schools that were off base.
Yep.
So some of the challenges that we saw that the kids were having were just dealing with trauma, diversity, multiple deployments, how to adjust to their family members being gone over and over again. Also, interestingly enough, with the growth of our city in Nashville and that growth being pushed to Clarksville, just changes in demographics and how people relate to one another. So those were some of the challenges that we witnessed.
Right on. So I think that's, as I'm peeling back layers and thinking about where to take this, one thing that I think is incredibly important for us to focus on in the military is how are we taking care of our families, and genuinely not discounting that, hey, whenever dad or mom gets on a plane, and they have people at home, that is can be an adverse childhood event for some people. What are some of the techniques, I guess, that you help that adolescent, the 5 through 18-year-old? What are some of the coping mechanisms that you give them for that kind of constant come and go of a military member?
Well, the first is helping them identify what is going on in their heads and in their hearts so that they can use their hands to build up and not tear down.
Okay.
So if we break that down in another way, it's how to help kids understand what they're thinking about, what they're feeling, so they can express that in a positive way that brings help, not hurt, to themselves and to others.
Okay.
Some of those techniques might be using stories to really help them open up. So reading stories themselves or reading stories with a trusted adult, and then using the themes of those stories as a catalyst for conversation about what's happening in their own lives, using journaling so that they can express through words or through pictures what they're thinking and feeling, using art as a means of communicating what is going on inside of them.
Right.
Because the worst thing that can happen is to keep that all bottled up.
Yeah.
We really want kids to be able to open up and share with their family member who's at home, or even find means to share with the family member who's been deployed about what's going on inside them.
Right on. Yeah, actually, that's funny, because not funny. It's you're seeing a lot of the same techniques being used for trauma-based therapy for PTSD and all that other stuff, which kind of listen, I've got 3 kids of my own. I think this is an important thing for us in the military. Is when you brought up bottling things up. That's what we do in the military. Especially medicine, pre-hospital medicine, first responders. We're all notorious for masking and putting stuff internal. For those of us who have children, what is appropriate to share with kids? I have a 4-year-old, I have an 8-year-old, and I have a 15-year-old, and I'm always walking this fine line of how much do I want to tell them about like what dad actually does or has done, like trying to help them understand, like, hey, if dad's having a bad day or mom's having a bad day, like how do we get like that mutual grace kind of like mentality, and what is appropriate for age groups to kind of share about life experiences as an adult?
That's a great question, Sam. Um, Part of it, I think, is letting kids take the lead.
Mm-hmm.
They'll often give us indication of what they feel comfortable knowing
Okay.
and what they feel comfortable not knowing. If they're asking questions, then we can answer them honestly. But it, like you said, it doesn't mean we have to give them all the details about what's
Right.
going on because we don't want to heighten their anxiety.
Right.
Um, I'm thinking about, some of the events that have occurred in our world over the past many years, actually,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's climate events or like hurricanes, tornadoes. We had tornadoes here in Nashville
Yep.
last week, or even going back to COVID or, other disasters. Um, it's a fine line of telling kids because they're smart. They
Right.
know, whether it's a big event that they overheard on the news or whether they just know, hey, mom or dad is having an off day, they pick up on it,
Yep.
but we don't have to give them a steady diet
Right.
of that information. And I think also letting them know that they're safe,
Mm-hmm.
that we love them, that it's our job as the adult to look out for them and protect them, that we're going to provide for them, that we're on their team, that if they have questions, they are welcome to ask. That kind of support and reassurance goes a long way with kids. Um, but I think, having open conversations, and a lot of times, I mean, this is what I've done with my own kids. They're older now, they're all adults, but using media as a jumping off point.
Mm-hmm.
So if you or your spouse don't feel comfortable talking about what you've done, perhaps there's a television show or a
Right.
video or a song, or that just becomes the catalyst for the conversation, and using that kind of as neutral ground to then share your own experience.
Right. And so then too, like, since I have quite a broad spectrum of ages, like what is, I know there's plenty of literature about this, but we're talking, not reading right now. Like what is like appropriate per ages? Because that's another thing I deal with is like you and should like you have not isolate for like should you contain what you're talking about to a specific age group and like protect like perhaps the little ears that are not ready to hear stuff versus like just being an open book in front of everybody, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely age appropriate conversation. So you could be much more in depth or specific with your 15-year-old than you would be with your 4-year-old.
Right.
Um, but then there are conversations that you could have as a whole family in order to say, this is something that our entire family has experienced and is still experiencing.
Right.
And this is how we're going to get through it together.
Right.
And I think part of that conversation is how you frame it. So
Mm-hmm.
are you framing it as one of experiences of anger and fear or regret? Or are you framing it as an experience of um, learning opportunity, of hope, of strength, and of resilience?
Right.
So part of that framing is just as important as the story you tell about what happened.
Okay. Yeah. So like, I find myself doing that, like trying to take kind of the bad days, the bad nights, and like, hey, like, how do we find the silver lining on that without going to the brutal details, of course, because I think that is important for kids, like to see. I'm gonna try to phrase my mind here. Like, how do you feel about kids seeing their parents' struggles? Like we don't like. I grew up in a very my parents like were very introverted kind of we didn't see a lot of struggle, we didn't see a lot of adversity, we didn't see a lot of kind of like some of the negatives of life growing up, and I feel like it took me a while to kind of figure out, hey, what is normal for adversity? Like, so I guess my question is, is it appropriate for kids to see kind of like the difficult discussions or adversity in the house, and then also to what level?
Mhm. I would say yes. Um, I've been a single mom since my oldest was 10.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's 27. And my other two are now 22 and 19. So they have seen my struggle. They've seen my struggle emotionally, financially, professionally, personally. Like they've seen it.
Right.
And I've had conversations with them. I don't go into all the nitty gritty details of the
Mm-hmm.
struggles. As they've gotten older, I share more, but I've been honest with them. And I think part of the beauty of that is giving them permission to struggle too,
Right.
letting them know that life is a process, that I don't expect them to be perfect, that we're all on a journey, that we're all growing, that we're all learning. And it takes, in a lot of ways, I think it takes the pressure off because, like you, my parents didn't talk about that, but
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because kids are perceptive. They know. They know if mom or dad are off. They know somehow if there's financial troubles in the house. Like the kids feel it.
Right.
And so why not name it for them and say, yeah, things are tight right now, but we're going to make it. It's going to be okay. I'm going to pick up another job or, whatever the situation may be, but always coming back to the point of I'm the grown up and my job first and foremost is to take care of you.
Right.
It's
And then
not your job to take care of me. I've got you. I love you. I'm here to protect you. I'm here to provide for you.
awesome. Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah, it's like I think that's one thing. Excuse me. That it's hard to do is to not project negative like problems, like walking that super fine line of like, hey, it's good to be genuine and real, but also like not crossing that line where now it becomes an adverse childhood event and they're scarred for life.
Exactly.
And like I wish there was an easy like freaking matrix to do this with, but man, it's so fluid.
It is fluid. And I remember when my youngest son was in second grade, he came home from a weekend at his dad and stepmom's house and had a lot of questions. He was like, they told me the whole story of the divorce, mom.
Mm.
And he just went on in detail. And I just sat there in our car. We were at a friend's house for a Super Bowl party. I'll never forget this. And the other kids had gotten out of the car, and he and I were in the car talking, and he was just sharing his heart. And I just kept saying, buddy, I'm so sorry. Those are grown up things. You didn't need to hear all that. And so I think, there is a fine line, right?
Yeah.
That we don't want to overburden them with things that are not theirs to bear
Right.
when they're 7 years old. But being honest to say, yeah, you're right. There were some tough things that happened. And as you get older, we'll talk in more detail if those are things that you want to know.
Yeah, I think that's always kind of like been my struggle too. Like, unfortunately, my own relationship did not survive my military career. So like, yes, the co-parenting, the balancing of what is appropriate to talk about is so challenging, especially when like someone like your perception of something or a story that's told you don't necessarily agree with, or it doesn't fit the what you remember.
Right.
And like that's something that for I guess, yeah, now we're going down kind of an interesting rabbit hole. I like this one. Because a lot of people in the military, they're either mixed families, broken homes, blended families. Like they have like people who are like, it's hard. Like I can go on all day about how the military fosters unhealthy relationships by incentivizing marriage. But that's neither here nor there. So, but like what, this is, I'm trying to collect my thoughts on how to say this articulately, is like when a child comes to you, like the story you just told, like, yes, those are grown-up things. Like if I guess like the high road is the right road to take. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
And that is not the easy road at all. But our kids need to hear us speak well of their co-parent.
Yeah.
Co-parent. They and I think I remember years ago, my youngest son's counselor actually saying to me, you know what, you've got to start telling your side of the story. So it's this tricky balance of like, yes, I'm going to speak well and I'm going to keep my mouth shut because that old
Yeah.
adage, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all.
It's a good adage. I believe in it.
Yeah, it is. But then there does come a point, especially in their middle school years and teen years, as they're starting to understand more of the world, as they're starting to understand more of the relationship, to say, well, there is another perspective,
Yeah.
or have you considered this? But one of the things that I try to do, and another friend of mine who's also a divorced mom, she was telling me she does this also, is I try to remember the funny stories,
Yeah.
the light moments. Like, did you know that at Christmas time, your dad and I used to, and fill in the blank with the story, just to let the kids know that there was a time that there was love there,
Right.
and that they came into our lives. All my kids are adopted, so they
Okay.
came into our lives out of love,
Right.
or in who other people's situations it might be. You were born out of love. So at one point, there was joy here. There
Right.
was hope. There was laughter. There was fun. And to let the kids know that they're the best part of the marriage, even
Yeah.
if the marriage didn't work.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's always such a hard struggle. Like, um, easier said than done on so many levels of things, and
Yes.
like looking at the kind of the military child, where a lot of times they like, all right, this is like a lot of times the kids will project internally on themselves. Like if a relationship fails, like, hey, it's my fault. Or to be fair, like sometimes people project that onto them. What is a good, like, obviously that's not right in any shape and form, but like if that is something that has been projected on someone, what are like ways that you've seen like how to counter that, like in various different age groups?
It's a great question. I think giving that reassurance that it's not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the kid's fault.
Mm-hmm.
These are adult things. And if a marriage fails or relationship fails, that's between the two adults.
Yeah.
And I think as you're talking about this, Sam, I keep thinking, the onus is on us as the adults to do our own work.
Right.
We
It,
need to be dealing with our stuff,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
not putting that on our kids. And I'm not sure, but I would hope that the military is offering that type of mental health support to families, to military members, so that they know, they have a place to go. And I think it's been an interesting few years, especially since COVID,
Right.
where there's a lack of stigma now when it comes to mental health issues. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people are much more open about, hey, I'm dealing with depression, I'm dealing
Right.
with anxiety, I'm dealing with bipolar, PTSD. And I think there's power in that. The fact
Yeah.
that we can say, hey, we're not perfect, we're human, and we're dealing with some really big stuff here.
Yeah.
And we're willing to get help for it. And us being willing to get that help gives our kids permission to get the help that they need to, whether it's from a school counselor
Right.
or some other mental health professional.
Yeah. No, that's yeah. The military is they try, like with anything, like there's some failures of execution, but there's definitely some very committed people inside of the military health system that are like focusing on this. And I think that's, yeah, like focusing on the family. Like the reason why we do it is if the family's happy, the service member is happy, then it gives the ability to do the silly things we do in foreign lands. You brought up counseling for your kiddo. What is a like? What is a good like age to? Because I did therapy as a child as well and continue it forward. Like, what is a good age to start that? And also, how like what should be the frequency of them going and talking to a trusted, unbiased person?
Mm-hmm. I know when my youngest started, he was really young. He was 6.
Okay.
And usually, from what I recall, the counselors suggest around 8,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere around there. My other kids were in counseling too. And so my daughter was about 8. My oldest was about 12 or so at the time. So, I mean, it was just all, but the wonderful thing is counselors know, and given family, if you find a great group to work with, and they consider family dynamics, sometimes they'll let the younger kids come in and provide that family support given whatever you're dealing with. And I think it's important to note too, because we do have a mental health professional shortage.
Yes.
And um, there can be a hardship finding access. And I don't know what it's like on base, but I do know, like in our rural and urban communities, it can be much harder to find access
Right.
than in suburban areas. And so looking at what resources are available at school, because a lot of the times the state will provide resources, whether it's behavioral health professionals in the school systems or even equipping the teachers themselves with social and emotional learning or mental health and wellness supports, that so they can help make it part of daily life. And it's not just for crisis
Right.
intervention, but it's
Yes.
really prevention and early intervention,
Right.
so that they're creating a culture of care at the school.
Yep.
Because when you think about it, the school is the first resource that a lot of families go to, the school or the pediatrician, right?
Yeah.
So tapping into those resources. And again, I can't stress enough, taking advantage of those prevention and early intervention resources is key.
Right. That's our educators. They carry a heavy burden. And that's, I think,
They
one of
do.
the big things is teachers. They are oftentimes kind of like the first eyes, or during COVID, all the reports of child abuse drastically dropped because, well, the children weren't in front of mandatory reporters. Actually, that brings something up. So, another thing too, people may worry about, if you're dealing with a toxic home life or a contentious home life, I feel like there's a resistance for people to allow their children to be open and honest with another adult because of the perceptions that they might be, the parents may be judged on what the kids are telling a counselor. Have you seen that?
Oh, goodness. I think that there's definitely fear and shame involved with any parent. I mean, whether it's a case of or potential abuse, or whether it's just, am I doing this right?
Right.
Am I good enough? I think that's a real human question that we ask all the time, is like, am I good enough?
Right.
And one of my hopes, it's going to sound like a rabbit trail, but I'll bring it back. I promise.
All right, here we go.
So, yeah. So I'm now part of the recovery community because one of my children has dealt with substance abuse issues.
Okay.
And one of the things that I love about being part of the recovery community is the honesty and the transparency and the acceptance. So, when you're seated in rooms with other families who've dealt with the worst of the worst, and they're there because they're offering you their experience, strength, and hope.
Right.
There's no shame in that.
Yeah.
It's just like, we're all on the same team, and what can we do to help each other be more healthy and more whole? And I wish that for all of us,
Right.
even outside of those rooms. How can we let each other know, hey, it's hard. Parenting is the hardest job I have.
It can
right? And it's just it's okay. You're not going to get it right every day. And maybe you will have to tell your kids you're sorry 1,000 times, but they've been given to you. You are the parent. There's a reason that they're yours and you're theirs,
Right.
And there's lessons that you can learn in ways that you're going to grow. And there's lessons they're going to learn in ways that they're going to grow. And you've got support, that non-judgmental support, I think, is something that we all need. And unfortunately, it might be hard to come by. So whether it's from a school or other military families or a faith community,
Right.
Finding ways that you can tap into people who love you for you and say, I've got your back. And even if that means I need a break today, can my kids come over for a play
Yeah.
date?
Yeah.
That's a really real thing. You might have to tap in and tap out with each
Yeah.
other.
No,
Um,
that's something I see like definitely in the military community. Like if you look at on post housing, like it's kind of like the idyllic American kind of like, hey, my kids just wander down the street to this house or whatever. Like it's
yeah.
kind of what we pictured in the America of the 50s where kids were just out running amok and doing whatever. Like still happens in some places, but everybody is a much more I think worried about all the bad things that can go wrong. You brought up, yeah, like having that community. I think that's kind of the nutshell, and that's so like the military itself. Like it's a very close, like not, it's a very close knit community, not closed community. Well, it kind of is, and that's something I've seen through my career. Is like you'll have certain bases that. Like look at Fort Campbell, for instance, Clarksville. Like Fort Campbell dominates Clarksville. Like out here in Washington, Fort Lewis or JBLM, we are nestled inside of just like a major metropolitan area, basically, and a lot of people forget the base exists. I guess I completely just lost my train of thought, so I apologize for that. One thing, like for the military child, I think it's very easy for a service member to prioritize the job over the family. And I'm going to speculate, and I'm going to ask your opinion. Like, have you dealt with or seen children primarily of service members or veterans that have struggled with feeling like they're not the priority of their parent?
I have not in that setting, but I do know that that's a common theme for all kids.
Yeah.
I mean, whether a family member is a doctor or a lawyer or a nurse or a teacher, I mean, I think that's part of the struggle that we as parents have about keeping first things first.
Right.
So it's not relegated just to military families. And I think that's where, instituting simple traditions, like we're going to have a family meal together. I mean, some people might strive for that every day. Others might say because of extracurricular activities, it's only possible 2 times a week. Okay. Right. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 o'clock, we're sitting here at this table and we're gonna be here together. Or if it's Saturday morning pancake breakfast, or whatever kinds of traditions that we can put into place to let kids know that they've got family as an anchor,
right,
and that they are a priority to us. And then again, I think it's that communication, that honest communication about, hey, I've got this project or I've got this deadline that I'm working towards. I'm going to be super busy for the next couple weeks, but I'm here. I'm not tapping out. We may not have as much time to hang in the evenings, right, but you can always call me. You can text me. I want to know what's going on in your world. Tuck-ins, like having those few moments before the kids fall asleep at night to just check in with them. That's a beautiful time when they usually open up and share about what they're really thinking and feeling. Their guard is down, right? So finding those moments and recognizing that, yes, it's quantity time, but it's also the quality of time.
Right.
Because you could be in the same house with your kid or with your spouse. I mean, we all did it during COVID, right? 15 hours a day, but you're still not having meaningful conversations.
Right.
So how can you create those opportunities to really connect heart to heart?
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's why finding stories, whether those are books or movies, videos, songs, using those as a jumping off point to really dig deep into what's happening in their heads and in their hearts is so important.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's how, like, man, it's hard because you have to like consciously prioritize the time and like focusing. You brought up quality time as opposed to quantity. You mentioned extracurricular, so I'm going to go down that rabbit hole real quick. It seems like a bunch of parent friends who always like literally just seem like they're chauffeurs or Uber drivers for their kids to soccer practice, dance, whatever, hockey. Like, what is the line? Like, is it not line basically? Like, when is When is there such a thing as too many activities?
Absolutely.
And then I
Yes.
guess how. All right, so yeah, that's as I try to unpackage this, like, what are some of the markers you can see in a child that can help you recognize, like, hey, maybe I'm overloading this kid, or to be
If they're
fair,
stressed.
overloading
Yeah.
yourself as well.
If the kids are stressed.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, and that's a big thing that is talked about. The rates of anxiety and depression are incredibly high in our country for kids,
right,
right? Particularly mm, uh, middle school, high school. That's crazy. I mean,
right,
kids are kids. They're only going to be kids once in their lives. They need to have fun.
yeah,
They need to have time to play. So pushing and pushing and pushing them is really doing them a disservice. There's lots of studies out there about the power of boredom,
right, yes,
how like kids need time to get bored because boredom and having nothing to do actually is an instigator of creativity and
right,
innovation. So the myth that we always have to be entertaining them with either a screen or an activity is just that. It's a myth, and
yeah,
it can actually do more harm than good. So giving kids downtime, let them play with Legos in their room. Let them play with baby dolls.
yeah,
Unplug the television for a while. Let them go out and explore the backyard.
yeah.
Just taking it much more simply can actually be the healthy way.
That's good. Yeah, I feel like I'm doing something right. Like, all right, you guys go outside and do something. Yeah,
Yes,
it's yeah, because I think it's also hard, like, because you're a parent, I'm a parent. Like, lots of our listeners are parents. Like, giving ourselves the grace. I think that's another thing too. It's like we need to be graceful to ourselves. Like, hey, this is
yeah,
hard. Like, you brought it up. Like, it's being a parent, like, the most rewarding, but also the hardest job you will ever do in your entire life.
absolutely.
I thought managing privates was hard. Like, no, man, they're at least somewhat adults, but I love that you bring that term. Like, you have to learn how to be bored, like, and that it's okay. Like, because yeah, like these there you go, for the screens. I'm curious to see your opinion on this. Like, my opinion is, hey, the anxiety, depression are masking other neurodivergent symptoms of primarily like ADHD, because we've completely rewired our brain by exposing ourselves to massive levels of dopamine at very young ages.
Mhm.
Since you've been in this field for 30 years, have you kind of seen, like, the uptick in anxiety and depression? Does it correlate with kind of like the heavy usage of of multiple streams of media?
That's a good question. And there's lots of different studies that say different things,
Right.
right? Um, so I could not give a definitive opinion on that. I My guess is that some of that anxiety and depression are related to a lack of connection
Mm-hmm.
to caring adults, as well as just lack of connection to each other as
Right.
people. I'll
Yeah.
explain that in a minute.
Okay.
And then also being inundated with so much information all the time. So not only do kids have games at their fingertips, but they've got world news at their fingertips.
Right. Yes.
If we go back to what we said earlier about some things kids just don't need to, it's too much, right? They just need to be kids. So when they're hearing that constant chatter from CNN or Fox News about what's happening in China or what's happening in the Middle East or
All
what's
right.
happening in, like, it's just too much to process, and that contributes to their anxiety. I mean, they're worried about the world around them.
Right.
And when you think back to our childhoods, we didn't have that. So our whole world was our neighborhood,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how can we manage that for them so that it's not a constant stream of information? When I talk about connection with each other, my nieces delayed getting their driver's license for years. When I was a kid, it was like as soon as we turned 16,
Yep.
we're at the DMV getting our license. Why? Because we wanted to drive over to our best friend's house and hang out.
Right.
Well, they do that via
Yeah.
Snapchat now,
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
so there's a power in face to face
Hmm.
that cannot be replaced by screens.
Right.
And I think modeling that for our kiddos, showing them like part of our family culture is having other families over for dinner.
Right.
Or part of our family culture is hosting game nights.
Yeah.
Like we do these things because we value connection, we value community, we value relationships with real people, not just images on a screen.
Yeah.
I think that because one of the ways, I mean, there's multiple ways that we can help decrease anxiety and depression, but one is through healthy relationships.
Right. Yeah. And then modeling that. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like as adults, like it's one of my, like, I'm a people watcher, so I love like when I'm on public transit or out in public. Like, it is incredible to see the number of people who are just head down, scrolling, scrolling. It's like I was at my kid's baseball game, and there's like a 40, 50-year-old person just doom scrolling on Instagram. It's like, hey, dude, like you're at your kid's baseball game. Why don't you pick your head up? Because you guess who's coming? Like, guess who looks over to see if you're paying attention?
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. And I can tell you, as a parent of now young adult children, those years go so fast.
yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
when you're in it, you feel like it lasts forever because there's the mundaneness of picking the Cheerios up off the floor. But it's over before you know it. And then, you're sitting looking back going, I wish I had that baseball game to go to again.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's the key too. Like for so much of the stuff our children are struggling with, it's because we're kind of like we're enabling it. Like we are the cause. Like to be fair, like I agree with you. The 24-hour news cycle is exhausting. I've always been my own personal opinion is like that's where we started to see the degradation of like with outrage culture, for lack of a better term, because like something happens in Des Moines, Iowa. Like I live in Seattle, I don't care what's going on in Des Moines, Iowa, and like, but then all of a sudden people care. You're like, all right, like take a break. I think that's like what you're saying is like so much of what our kids are struggling with is like, hey, like we as adults, as the more intelligent people, should be aware of how we're projecting and being perceived. Um, had a question that completely it escaped me, so sorry about that. um yeah, like so I think that's a good question I have for you, like because my I watch the teenage to mid 20s, like just they're not talking to each other on their phones. Like what is an appropriate amount of like media consumption for children?
I'm laughing because there's stuff that comes out all the time by the American Pediatric Association that says even like under 2, they shouldn't be exposed to screens. But how many parents are using screens as a babysitter, even for their kids
Yes.
who are under 2? You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, and I can't remember the latest. I want to say it's somewhere between 2 and 4 hours for kids 8 to 12, somewhere in
Yeah.
that younger age, and then it increases. But the average, I mean, these are recommendations, but the averages are way higher.
Oh yeah.
So for teenagers, the average might be 6 to 9+ hours of screen time per day.
Yeah.
And that might include schoolwork,
Right.
but some of them are sleeping with their phone right next to their pillow. And they have their notifications set.
Mm-hmm.
So they're waking up whenever somebody gives them a message on Instagram.
Right.
And I think those are, again, when you think about family values, family traditions, putting into place some policies and procedures at home. I
Right.
mean, your military families, right? You're used to policies and procedures, but why not bring those into the home? And it could be as simple as we dock our phones in the kitchen at night,
Right.
all of us,
Yeah. Yeah.
and parents being part of that. And or at mealtime, we put our phones in a safe place and we don't touch them because we want to have this conversation here.
Right.
We don't
Yep.
need to be down here. So I think this is one of the things I've seen. When you asked a while ago about trajectory over time, changes that I've seen with families and kids and communities. I've seen parents become, in many ways, more attuned to their children.
Mm-hmm.
There's this whole gentle parenting movement, which is awesome in so many ways. But I also want to remind parents that you are the parents.
Right.
You have the authority to say no to your children.
Right.
But your job is not to make them happy or be their friend. Your
Right.
job is to be their parent.
Yeah.
And they need that from you, because when they go to school or when they go to the workplace, if they don't have that healthy respect for authority, they're going to have some trouble.
Right. Yeah.
You
And
know,
we're seeing that
it's
in the
not bad to
military.
take the phone away.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like we see that in the military. Like having my own children significantly improve my ability to be a leader, because like this latest generation that's coming in, like they want to know the why. And like, guess what? A 4-year-old asking you why 37,000 times is a really good way to figure out, like, oh, maybe what we're doing makes absolutely no sense. And I think that's another thing too. Like, it's an interesting dynamic, the push pull, because yes, you're the parent, but also like walking that fine line of allowing them to, I'm not going to say question authority, but be curious enough about a process to say, hey, like, why are we doing it this way? And then also being like, whether a leader or a parent, like you are a leader if you are a parent, period.
Yes.
Excuse me. That not taking that as a direct assault to your authority, I guess, is an important balance to have. Talking about screens though, so this is another thing that you brought it up, like, hey, so much of interaction for children, like mainly the adolescents, the high school age children, is through social media. So like, if I was to say, like, so taking away a child's connection to their world, can that lead to adverse consequences?
Oh gosh. I mean, yeah, but it's not the end of the world. And
Yeah.
maybe this is where I'm going to seem really old school, but when my daughter was in middle school, when she was mouthing off with me at home, what's the first consequence for her? Give me your phone.
Yeah. Yep.
I will cut it off. Like, I pay for that bill. I bought that phone. You need to respect your mother. So if you're going to have problems with that, then we can take that away.
Yep.
You're not going to die.
Yeah.
You know? So I think we need to not be so afraid that, oh, they're going to hurt or they're going to be cut. Like, okay, well, they'll get over it. We didn't even have that access. And we did pretty well. I mean, our generations were the ones who created that technology. So, you know what I mean? I think that sometimes we get too afraid. I don't know if you've read any of Brene Brown's work.
No.
She's a wonderful researcher out of Texas, but she talks about this culture that we have where everybody gets a reward. Everybody wins a trophy, right? At the end of the season. That's not helping.
Right.
Kids need to fail.
Yep.
They need to feel pain. They need to know that there are consequences for their actions.
Right.
Positive or negative, right? It's okay. That's because guess what? If we're protecting them from that all the time, when they get out into the real world, whether it's their job in the military or their job at Kroger, which is our local grocery store here, and they have problem with their boss, you know, they can't run to me or to you and whine about it. They've got to back up and deal with it, you know? So, I mean, I'm all for positive affirmation and loving our kids and supporting them and encouraging them. But how do that part of building resilience is helping them pick themselves up after they fall, letting them fail.
Yep.
And letting them know that failure is not the end of the world.
Yeah, that's. I subscribe to that brand of parenting as well. I'm definitely like the snowplow helicopter parent. Like if I'm a helicopter, it's more just to basically I'll catch you before you hit the deck and have a massive head trauma, but we'll let the knees get scuffed up a little bit here and there. Because like I think that's something we're seeing too, like with people coming into the military, because an 18-year-old is still a child. I don't care what you
Yes.
say. Like they're not developed, and they're even becoming less developed when they're coming in because they haven't had like that kick in the teeth. And like we've seen that change in military training where it's a little bit more feeling oriented, I'll say. But it's like, yeah. The thing that kills me is like we all know this. Like literally, all like the informed person or even someone who just has any ability to observe the world around them. Like we all know this, but yet we can still continue to enable all these bad habits, and like to
Mhm.
include ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, I wish there was an easy solution. Like that's the thing is like we're just kind of we're rapping. They're sorry guys, ain't no solution to this problem, unless we just like completely go off the grid. But that's not a realistic thing. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm trying to think here. Like and that's another thing too, like because you work in education, you spend time in the education system. Like I look at it like a high school diploma to me when I graduated, like meant you could go adult. Like nowadays it seems like a high school diploma means like you have like pre-college done, like now go to college and really not learn how to adult either. um so like, yeah, so I guess in your opinion, like that's my opinion, in your opinion, like are you seeing something similar? And like how do we as parents, like because yeah, the education system used to do so much of the like the preparation for life. We've kind of seen the shift, it's ebbing and flowing back and forth, but like as a parent, as we're preparing the next generation to kind of take the reins, like I'm trying to formulate this in the right, so like what is a good age to like start conditioning them, like hey man, like you're going to be an adult, like because 18, like 18 used to be like yeah, you go vote, you can go drive. Like 16, the same thing, like I'm out of the house doing all this stuff. But it's kind of shifting more and more to the right where you're seeing people who are in their 20s still living at home, 30s, 40s. Like as parents, like when should we start like giving our kids that dose of reality of like hey, you're going to be an adult soon or eventually, like here's some of the things you need to be getting ready for, I guess is a weird roundabout question.
I think that it happens from early childhood,
Mm,
honestly. Giving responsibilities in the home, simple things like chores.
yeah.
This is your job. We're a family. Part of our job is that we take care of each other. Your job this week is to sweep the kitchen floor. Your job next week is to clean the bathroom. I mean, it's giving kids age appropriate responsibility for being part of the family community, right?
Yeah.
I think I don't know where this started, but somewhere along the line, we thought that our job was just to give them Disney World and Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
It's
No.
not,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
wholeheartedly
and
agree.
yeah, and I know there have been studies that have come out about other countries, particularly Asian countries, that rites of passage happen even in very early childhood, where a child needs to go run an errand to a grocery store,
Right.
like walk there by themselves and walk back.
Yeah.
And I think part of this comes from we have a fear culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but are we going to let fear rule us,
Right.
or are we going to take back the reins? I mean, I've worked in schools where shootings have happened and been part of the recovery efforts. Again, I say, what do we do on the front end
Right.
for early intervention, prevention efforts? And that happens at school, but it happens at home too.
Right.
So that we're building kids who are strong and responsible and resilient and know how to handle conflict
Right.
and don't let things escalate. You know, so I think it's not just, oh, you're 16, all of a sudden you got to get ready to be an adult. It's something that happens over time,
Right.
and it's a style of parenting, it's a philosophy of parenting, and not and more than that, it's a philosophy of community.
Right.
Like, how am I preparing my child or my children to be contributing members of society?
Right. Yeah, I think that's like one of my other jobs I do. I work on military transition, and we definitely focus on like, hey, like it's okay to just focus on your family if you want. Like be a present parent, because like as we like this is a long game. Like we look at generational shift. Like it starts when they're like 20 years ago. Like our generational shift has started for this generation.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like healthy responsibility, age appropriate responsibility. And then like what are your thoughts on age appropriate consequences and like what do because like if someone doesn't do their chores, what is it like what is your opinion on age appropriate consequences and then also consistency with those consequences?
Consistency is the hardest thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a parent. um, so I am all about those consequences, but I'm also all about the rewards.
Yeah.
And I think that and I would err on the side of the positive,
Right.
right? So how are we creating those positive childhood experiences?
Right.
How are we helping them understand that their contribution to the family or their contribution to the community is beneficial for them as well as for others? And it might start with simple things like, you know, marbles in a jar
Okay.
or stickers on a sticker chart or an allowance,
Right.
building that way. Now, the thing that, is that it's a very age old uh, debate about external rewards versus internal rewards,
Mm-hmm.
extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. So, we can go round and round about that. But we all get paychecks, right?
Right.
So I think part of it for kids too is finding out what motivates them.
Right.
Is it saying, you earn X amount of stickers in your chart, and that means that you're going to win a prize, or we have a special family night out, or my youngest son, and I think taking into account too, I have to say this with the kids that I work with currently, as well as my own family, if there's any neurodivergence.
Yeah.
Right? So if there's ADD, ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
anything else going on, autism, there's different things you have to consider.
Right.
So my youngest, who's dealt with ADHD, to get him through middle school, it was like, buddy, I just need you to not get in trouble with your teachers this week. Show up to classes and get your homework in. If you do that on Friday, we're going to Sonic and you can get the biggest hot fudge sundae that you want. That motivated him.
Okay. Yeah, I think.
I mean, it's finding what helps motivate them in order for them to understand that their actions, positive or negative, have consequences.
Right.
But I'm always looking for the positive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I think, making lemonade out of lemons is always like one of the hardest things to do, but still.
Yeah.
I think I love that you brought up intrinsic and extrinsic motivators for children, particularly because that's one thing I struggle with, and like, man, like trying to help a child find what intrinsically motivates them is probably the greatest challenge I've ever dealt with in my life. It's like, all right, what do you care about, my guy? Like, how can I get you to light that fire internal? And I think that's one thing that we should, like, being a parent, the hardest thing is like we give them so much extrinsic like drive, like, hey, we're going to baseball today, we're doing this, like I'm a big fan of like say, hey, what do you want to do? Like, what, make a choice, like make a decision, like even something as simple like, hey, what do you want for dinner tonight? Like, no, I'm not making you dinner. You tell me what you want, I'll make it. Like, I'll go get it, but like you need to make the choice, because I think that's one thing we're seeing a lot of. I guess, in your opinion, like, are we taking away the decision making drive in children because we basically are doing it all for them?
Yes. I mean, years ago, this was in 2007. I was at a conference and heard a psychologist speak about cell phones being the external umbilicus, the umbilical cord. It's a technological umbilical cord. And they talk specifically about kids not able to make a decision about what they wanted to purchase when they went to the mall with their friends without calling mom and asking, well, what do you think? So again, it goes back to giving kids that. I love that you asked choices, giving them the power to choose.
Right.
And maybe they'll choose wrong,
Yeah.
but let them figure out, oh, that wasn't such a good idea.
Right.
That's how we learn,
Yeah.
and as you were talking about all of these things, I was thinking some of it too, when it comes to the intrinsic motivations, is sharing and communicating our values with them as a human being, as a person. Like
Right.
in our family, we choose, and choice is the opportunity and power to make decisions. We choose to be kind. We treat others the way we want to be treated. We choose courage. We stand up for what is right. We face our fears. We choose honesty. We speak and act truthfully. So finding out what are our values and how do we pass those on to our kid. And again, those tools that I talked about earlier, using stories, using journaling, using art as means and modes of communicating those values, and then also providing opportunities to reflect on those values, and then look at the life application.
Yeah, that's like, I think, man, when you look at how kids get screwed up, it's all because of us grown-ups doing, like, yeah, like you need to figure out your own crap before you mess up with someone else. Like, I think that's one of the big things too. Like, as adults, like, we're not spending enough time figuring out who we are. Like, and I see that being paid forward to children day in and day out. Like, I don't really, like, what do I actually stand for? Like, people are not reflective. We're seeing that, like, that trickle down effect, because adults are just as guilty of consuming way too much media as a child who's on an iPad at 2. I think that's pretty poignant on that. Like, hey, you need to know what is important to you. And two, like, I'm sure you probably think many of the things we're talking about, we seem to be on the same page with. Like, how toxic is it if a parent, like, if a child sees, like, it's basically like a hypocritical act by a parent. Like, how, like, if they say, do as I say, not as I do, and then they do, and like how hard is it to course correct a child who's dealt with somebody basically saying, do as I say, not as I do?
It's confusing. And it can negate the message that we're trying to teach them.
Right.
And I think there are times where it goes back to that conversation about there are things that we as adults might do that we don't want our kids to do because they're adult things. Like, for example, drinking.
Right.
And it's not appropriate for a 12-year-old to drink, but we might drink, but we're telling our 12-year-old not to drink, so but having the conversation about that, not just saying don't do it, but saying, this is a grown-up thing. And when you're 21, then I'll take you out for your first beer, or I'll take you out for your first glass of wine. And that's something that we'll do together. It's a rite of passage. And so I think that's when you're talking about the new people coming into the military wanting to know the why. I'm all about the why. Right. However, I think that deeper than the why, there has to be a trust in a relationship, so that when you say jump as a leader, those cadets will jump because they trust you. And they know that you've got their best interest at heart. They know that he's got my back, and he's proven it to me over and over again, and he's shown up for me. And yeah, he's driven me nuts, but he's made me a better man. You know what I mean? So it's the same with kids at home. It's the same with teachers in a classroom. It's how are we showing up for these young people so that they know that we love them, and that they're people, that we are people they can trust.
Oh, that's powerful. And I think, like, I'm looking at my little stopwatch, and like that's a perfect way to wrap this up. Like, and I think that, the message of trust, like, it transcends all. Like, if somebody trusts you, like militarily, anything else, like anything, like, they will go to bat. They will go, like, that is probably the greatest intrinsic motivator for someone, is to have someone they follow, that they can follow, that they trust wholeheartedly. So, Tamara, I'll kick it over to you for any closing thoughts before we wrap this up, and just appreciate your transparency.
Oh, well, I am honored to share, and I'm so thankful for the work that you do and that our military families do. And I am hopeful that we can be part of the ongoing work with children and families and communities through what we do with Love in a Big World or what we're about to do with the new work of Brave Up. So I'll share those links with you so you can share them out.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we'll throw those links up here in a couple seconds at the end of this episode. And again, Tamara, thanks for hanging out for a little bit, and we'll talk soon. All right, guys,
Okay.
have a good rest of your day. All right, guys, as promised, here's Tamara's information. Go ahead and look her up. She has a ton of awesome information about childhood social emotional learning that might be beneficial to you or your family.